Welcome into the Lakers Report by Chat Sports. I am your host, Harrison Graham, for today's show. And on today's show, updated free agency targets for the purple and gold. We haven't done one of these since Darvin Ham was named the head coach, so we thought we'd take a look at some new names to keep in mind. You kind of look at the free agency outlook for LA. For one, free agency almost here, guys. We're talking less than 3 weeks. June 30th, 6 o'clock Eastern Time, 3 o'clock on the West Coast. Free agency deals can be agreed to. Obviously, LA is pretty cash-strapped unless they were to trade a Russell Westbrook or an Anthony Davis, so you're going to look at some cheaper signings. We'll see how creative Rob Pelinka and the front office gets. But I think a main area to watch is who's going to play under that $6.3 million mid-level exception. A lot of the names we'll look at today could fit that mold. Now, you look at the team needs for Los Angeles. They can need more playmakers on both ends. You can't have LeBron always being in control of the offense, and obviously, you've got Russ still, but you'd like to have some guys, especially off the bench, that could help give you some of that creation on both ends of the floor. 3-and-D players always need more wings that can shoot, that can stop opposing offenses, at least slow them down. You could use a center, a guy who could space the floor, I think, would be ideal. They went back to the Dwight Howard well last year with okay success, but I think having a guy that could space the floor would be nice. And then more depth and youth, right? I mean, what was the thing last year after free agency? We were all excited, but not a lot of depth, not a lot of youth, energy. I think getting some guys who can bring that would be ideal in Darvin Ham's first season. Let's hear from you before we get to some of these guys. Name a player that you want the Lakers to sign in NBA free agency. Get your votes in down in the comment section and go ahead and let us know, pin comment on today's show. Some playmakers, and we break these down into these different categories. Malik Monk, who's obviously an internal free agent, and I would argue was probably the best signing from last year's class, right? I thought he played pretty well, almost 14 points per game. We know he can shoot the lights out of it. He's gotten a little bit better each and every year as a creator. He's never going to average 7 assists per game or something like that, but I think he could get above that 3 number this year, 3.5, maybe 4. I like Malik Monk. He's bouncy, he's energetic, he's an okay defender. He can really score offensively when he gets into rhythm, which I thought at times he did a really good job of last year. I think he's a guy to prioritize bringing back among your internal free agents. I think he's a really good fit here, and I think he would be smart to come back as well. Now, like this video if you want to re-sign Malik Monk. I know I do, and I think a lot of you guys do as well. Like I said, he's probably the one depth guy they signed last year that actually exceeded expectations. Like this video if you'd like to see Malik Monk back in LA. Next up is Ricky Rubio, who's a true point when healthy. Now, last year, obviously got injured, then got traded to Indiana, but never played there as he was recovering from his torn ACL that he suffered in December. But he can still play, especially as a distributor. 13 points, almost 7 assists per game last year. Didn't shoot it all that well last year, but he's been a streaky shooter at times in his career. I think as a backup point guard, which is something we've talked about a lot on the Lakers Report, that could make some sense if he checks the medical boxes. Obviously, he's into his 30s now, so a torn ACL, a little bit of a different deal than for someone who's 25 or 26. How about Gary Payton II, who has kind of been a revelation for the Warriors this year? Got cut initially after training camp, brought him back to be, I think, the 15th man on their roster, and then just kind of earned his way into the rotation. Has been playing some real minutes in the NBA playoffs. Excellent on-ball defender, good shooter as well. Now, the efficiency is definitely inflated because he does not shoot a lot. But I think even with more volume, he could still be a pretty good shooter. He's not going to shoot 61%, but I think he can be a mid-high 30s from 3 guy and then mid-40s from the field as well if he's shooting a little bit more. But his intensity and youthfulness, I think, is something that would be a welcome sight in Los Angeles. How about Victor Oladipo, who's not exactly the youngest guy anymore? He's an old late 20s guy, if you will, but he actually was pretty solid for Miami. The last few years it's like, oh man, the efficiency has waned and waned and waned, but when he played this year for the Heat, those final 8 to 10 games of the regular season, played pretty well, earned himself a spot in the playoff rotation, and was playing important minutes for Eric Spoelstra on a team that was one game away from the NBA Finals. I think he's a textbook mid-level exception type of guy for a team this offseason, and I think signing with a contender makes a lot of sense. So we'll see where Oladipo ends up. I would like to see him with the Los Angeles Lakers. I think it makes a lot of sense. All right, so there are some of the playmakers. We're going to go to the 3-and-D players here in just a moment. But first, subscribe to the Lakers Report. We're trying to get to 46,000 subscribers, over halfway there from 45 to 46,000. Just need 457 more of you guys to click that big red button, and you're going to want to be subscribed because you think our offseason coverage is hot now. Wait till the finals ends. We're going to have videos every day. We're already doing it 5-6 days a week. Maybe the Lakers sneak into the draft. We'll have to wait and see as well. Tell you what, if they buy a draft pick, we'll have you guys covered. YouTube.com/LakersTV. Don't miss any of it here on the Lakers Report. Otto Porter Jr. as we begin our 3-and-D players chunk here. Listen, he's become a guy that Steve Kerr has mentioned multiple times during this playoff run as a key cog because he's missed a couple of games with injuries, and he's like, look, it's a big deal when we don't have Otto available. He can start. He can come off the bench. He's just a vet that you like to have, right, because he's played in this league for a long time. He can shoot the basketball. He can defend multiple positions. He's just a smart player, and the Lakers need more of that. I think last year, watching them play, they weren't a very smart team. Hopefully this year they get more of these high IQ guys, and I think Otto Porter would fit that mold. Nicholas Batum, who really had a revival with the Clippers over the past couple of years. He looked cooked in Charlotte a couple of years ago, comes over to the Clippers, plays pretty darn well, especially last year when they went to the Western Conference Finals, had a big playoff run there. Still played good this year too, though. 40% from three, 6'8". He can play the three, he can play stretch four. Really good defender, smart player as well, especially offensively. So skilled. He's a guy I would love for the Lakers to bring over from the Clippers. How about T.J. Warren, who basically, kind of like Anthony Davis, hadn't played much the past couple of years. But last time we saw him consistently was in the NBA bubble, and he was dropping 50 burgers left and right. Really good scorer that can start or come off the bench. Not a great defender, especially after the injuries, but I think he's a guy that could give you some scoring off that second unit and some a little bit of creation as well. Gary Harris, excellent defender. Kind of flatlined in Denver. They ended up trading him to Orlando, but I like his defense. He can shoot the ball a little bit as well. Veteran guy that's been on some winning teams with Denver. I think he'd like to get back in a winning organization. Bruce Brown with the Nets, who weirdly enough became a reliable player for Brooklyn because all those vets they signed just didn't really work out, but can play the two, can play the three. Good three-point shooter again. Pretty common theme here. Could shoot 40% from deep. Decent rebounder at 6'4" as well, at almost 5 per game last year. I think Brooklyn would like to bring him back as a guy that can start or come off the bench. I think he'd be a nice little addition for L.A. Where do the Lakers need more help? Front court, back court? What do you guys think? Type F for the front court, type B for the back court. I just think they need depth, period, in all areas. So get your votes in. Let us know what your thoughts are on this one. Let's go to the center position now. Mo Bamba, who's a name we've talked about once or twice here on the Lakers Report. He fits that mold of a center that can also stretch the floor. We talked about earlier, he can shoot the ball from three, was in the 30s last year. We'll get to the shooting splits in a second, but had a breakout year for the Magic after kind of being buried on that depth chart. Gets an opportunity this year after they trade Vucevic last year and some other guys moved on as well. Good rim protector. You look at the shooting splits, that's where he really impressed me. 38% from three-point range, and it's not like he was taking one a game. He was taking 4 per game. Good free throw shooter as well. I wonder if he's too expensive for the mid-level. $6.3 million. I could see a team throwing $10 to $12 million at him. He's still like 23 years old, 24, 7'2", good athlete, can shoot, can block shots. I mean, I could see a team throwing $12, $13 million at him. But if that does not happen, or if he's willing to take a little bit less to join the Lakers and try and win a championship, then maybe that could be a possibility. Now, I do think Thomas Bryant could fit that mid-level pretty well for Los Angeles because he is coming off injury with the Wizards. But before that, he was playing pretty damn well for Washington, shooting 52% from the floor. Now, the year before, he also missed a lot of time. He was really tearing it up in the limited action he's had. The problem is he hasn't been able to stay super healthy. He's missed a lot of time in his career with the Wizards. But he's a guy that per 36 can average a double-double pretty easily. Started his career with the Lakers. Maybe a reunion could make some sense. Chris Boucher, who's bounced around a little bit, coming over from Toronto, could be a little bit of a lesser option. Maybe you could actually get him on the league minimum. I'll be curious to see what his market is. Then, hey, bring JaVale back. He just bounces around. But, hey, I'll tell you what, the longer his career's gone on, he's actually been a pretty effective player. Over 9 points per game, 7 boards for Phoenix last year. They would like to keep him, believe me. JaVale McGee had a solid year as the backup center to DeAndre Ayton, whose future is somewhat in doubt as well. I'd love to see him back in the purple and gold. All right, there you go. An updated free agents list for you guys now that Darvin Ham is the head coach. Who's ready for the offseason? I mean, the offseason's here, but who's ready for it to really get here? The draft, free agency, all that trade stuff. Let me know. Type me in the comments if you are. If you're not typing me, then I guess you've just given up on the Lakers. And you can't do that because this is still the franchise in the NBA. Type me in the comments, and we'll see you next time here on the Lakers Report.